So you can say, Prabhu, it's already on YouTube.
Okay. Are you ready?
Yes, Prabhu.
Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. And those of you who are watching on YouTube, if it's practical, let me see you. If sometimes it's not practical, I understand that. But if it is, please turn on your video. So this is the son of Drona punished, which teaches a very significant lesson. And we'll talk about that for a few minutes and leave as much time as I can for questions. Nahi asyanatayam mam kinchid astram prachavarshanam Shahai astra teja unadam astra gnohi astra tejasa. O Arjuna, only another Brahmastra can counteract this weapon. Since you are expert in the military science, subdue this weapon's glare with the power of your own weapon. For the atomic bomb, there is no counter weapon to neutralize the effects. Just like in the military now, they have missiles. So if I'm shooting a missile at you, they can shoot a missile first to blow it up and neutralize it. But in an atomic bomb, it doesn't make a difference, because if it hits here or hits there, it does a huge destruction. But by subtle science, the action of a Brahmastra can be counteracted. And those who were expert in military science in those days could counteract the Brahmastra. The son of Dronacharya did not know the art of counteracting the weapons, and therefore Arjuna was asked to counteract it by the power of his own weapon. Om Jnana Jnana Chakshur Unmilitam Yai Shri Guruve Namaha. So, Ashvatthama was kind of creepy guy. I mean, anyone who would go and attack and kill sleeping children is quite a nasty person. Then when Ashvatthama was captured, the big issue came. What do we do with him? Do we kill him or show him mercy? Now, does somebody recall what the argument was to show him mercy? What Draupadi's argument was to show him mercy? Can somebody recall that? Well, the argument was Draupadi didn't want. She suffered with her own children being killed while they're sleeping. Horrible. I mean, Kshatriyas kill, by rules, but killed while sleeping. So horrible. And now, she commented, but he's a Brahmin. How can we kill a Brahmin? We have to release him. This is a son of Drona. Drona was your teacher, she's saying to her husband. Drona was your teacher. How could you kill your teacher's son? I don't want his mother to suffer the way I'm suffering. It's just not right to just let him go after her own children were killed. It'd be so difficult. There's no talk of revenge, but do not make the wife of Drona cry like me, she says. I am aggrieved for the death of my sons. Why should she suffer like me? What compassion. What heavy compassion. Bhima, though, disagreed. And he recommended killing this horrible culprit, Asvatthama, who in an angry mood had murdered sleeping children. Can you imagine killing children while they're sleeping? I mean, what a cowardly thing to do. To kill anyone while they're sleeping is bad enough, but to kill children while they're sleeping? For no other purpose. It wasn't his interest. He wasn't ordered to do so. He just did it out of vengeance and hate. We see all over the world this happens. I was reading, so I'm speaking in Africa today. So in Uganda, they had that famous war. And the Hutus and what were the two tribes in Uganda? The Tutsis and the Hutus or something like that. And they were killing each other just because it was vengeance. In India, we saw during partition, when the Hindus of Pakistan to India, the Hindus started killing the Muslims. The Muslims started killing the Hindus, and millions were going south from Pakistan to India, north from India to Pakistan, and there would be a rumor or a reality, no one knew, that one side had killed the other, and then they would just start attacking each other with sticks, whatever they had. And because the Muslims were circumcised and the Hindus weren't, they would rip off their clothes to see, are they the Hindu side or the Muslim side, at least among the men. And then they would rape the women. And it's not well reported in the literature, but that massacre, 1947, upon the independence of India, was one of the worst slaughters. It goes in the same level of slaughter as with the Nazis or with Stalin. Just a horrible, horrible slaughter. Why? Because somebody's birth was a little different community. And in America, the worst war we ever had was the Civil War. And the Civil War was the war when Abraham Lincoln was president and the issue of the South having slaves in the North. And families would fight on opposite sides, like in the Battle of Kurukshetra. So you would have brothers on the opposite sides fighting each other, and the brothers were trying to kill each other. And anybody who studies the American Civil War will see great similarities with the Battle of Kurukshetra, where each side had no compulsion just to go kill each other. It was one of the nastiest. American Civil War was particularly nasty, and there was very little medical care. They would, so if somebody got shot, weaponry have improved, but the medical care hadn't. So if somebody got shot in the leg, the doctor would just cut off the leg. They'd give them a little bit of liquor to help numb them, and then they'd give them something to bite on because the pain was so bad. They'd just go chop. And there were two kinds of doctors in the Civil War. There were surgeons and medical doctors. The medical doctors couldn't do much, and the surgeons would be the one to cut. But they didn't know about washing hands. Louis Pasteur hadn't come out with theories on germs, and they didn't have the cleanliness standards like is known in Indian culture forever. So they would just cut off legs and then disease and infection would set in because there was no cleanliness. It was a horrible, horrible war. And then it starts off just the war in American Civil War started off with one shot being fired in South Carolina. And after the shot was fired, then both sides started attacking each other. And then when they attack each other, then after that, a lot of the fighting was revenge. Oh, you killed my brother, I'm going to kill you. You killed this, I'm going to kill you. And it just escalates and escalates. And to this day in America, the Civil War has not ended. We saw the recent riot in which hooligans took over the American Congress, something that hasn't happened since the War of 1812, and that in 1814 the British took over the Capitol. And hooligans, and many of them are extreme right-wing. Whatever the press said or didn't say, the facts are they were extreme right-wing people. Many of them wore Confederate flags, pro-slavery kind of people, anti-Semitic, racist, just horrible people. So when we read about what's going on, the Battle of Kurukshetra, these kind of battles still go on. Now the difference is, at the end of the war, we're dealing with people who are basically in a mode of goodness and slipped into passion for the sake of fighting. So then they try to do the right thing. Now I'll give a little bit of history here. After World War I, Germany was defeated. For years, the French and British soldiers were on one side of a line and the Germans on the other in these trenches, and they would put bombs on each other. Airplane had just been invented. They had airplanes dropping bombs, and some of the bombs were mustard gas, which is considered now illegal to use in warfare. It's so nasty because you get mustard gas. When you breathe, it destroys your lungs. And after that, you slowly die of suffocation, but very, very slowly. Miserable, horrible death. So they were fighting, and it went on for years, and it was a stalemate. No side could win. Then the Americans entered the war. The American president was opposed to the war, but then it changed presidents. He entered the war. America sent a lot of soldiers, and the war was won. So the Allies, the French, British, Americans won World War I. And after World War I, they did reparations against Germany. That means Germany, look how horrible you lost this war. Now we're going to take all your money. And they taxed Germany so heavy, so heavy. Taxes were so high. In Germany, if you wanted to buy a loaf of bread, you had to fill a wheelbarrow up with money. There was so much inflation. You know, like a wheelbarrow of money, might be worth $1. So then after that war, Germany was so repressed that they elected a president called Chancellor. They call the president the Chancellor. Can anybody tell me who was elected president of Germany in the 30s? Elected now, not by a military coup, but actually elected. Can somebody tell me who that was? You can put in the chat if you like, or unmute. But does anybody know, between World War I and II, who was elected president of Germany? Very infamous person. Everyone in the world knows his name. Everyone in the world knows his name.
Adolf Hitler?
Hitler, of course. Hitler, he did not take over the military coup. The Germans were so upset, they elected him. Then he declared himself dictator. They call it Führer. And he became, and then he militarized Germany and decided to conquer the world. And he made a few big mistakes. First, he had a peace treaty with Stalin, and then he decided to attack he attacked on the Western Front. Now, this is an important point for devotees to understand. He attacked, first he attacked Poland, and Britain had said, if you attack Poland, we'll declare war against you. And Hitler said, they'll never declare war against me, so I can attack Poland. And he did. He defeated Poland in one day. He had tanks, and the Polish army was still on horseback. Why did Hitler think Britain would never attack him? Does anybody know? It's a very important point. He thought so because the British royal family was composed of British royal family had much Germanic blood. Queen Victoria, the longest queen ever in England, her husband was Prince Albert from Germany. So Hitler thought this British royal family, they're half German. They'll never attack another German. It was this bodily concept. He was wrong. Now, in the early 1900s, nationalism was not very important. Right now, if I would go and say I am American, I'm Nigerian, I'm Ugandan, I'm Indian, people think that's normal. But this is a recent phenomena. Before that, people were not very concerned about their nationality. They were much more concerned about their race. So if you had somebody who was had German blood, they were loyal to the Germanic race, not the country of England. That's what Hitler's calculation was. He made two mistakes. One, the King of England has no power. It's just a figurehead. Two, the British were loyal to their country, not to their race. But before that, it was it. Sometimes we look at issues. We have statements from Prabhupada that sometimes appear, some say, is that racist? Of course not. Prabhupada was speaking descriptively, and I'll answer questions on this if it comes, of what things were at the time. And in the 1800s, when Prabhupada was born in 1900, people talked about race. They didn't talk about nationality. That came later. That was a later phenomena. And so in the American Civil War, race was a major issue. Even in the South, where I live in America, very sadly so, people are still very much in bodily concepts of life. We saw it on the attack on the Capitol. So this kind of racist approach of bodily concept, or a caste approach where I am the royal blood, you're the ordinary blood. That's what Hitler's calculation. These calculations in Kali Yuga become very destructive. Now, if somebody really has royal blood, meaning they're whole, they're born, they're bred, they're born, and their whole thing is to serve the people and take care of them, no one minds. Everyone wants a good leader. But when somebody claims by royal blood, I'm the king, I'm the dictator, I can take all the money from the treasury, then we have what the Bhagavatam predicts in the 12th canto the world would look like. So now we're back to this story. I'm trying to set the scene of the Mahabharata in modern terms. And the reason I'm speaking about all this history of the 20th century is to try to help our mindset enter into what it was like to be on the battlefield of Mahabharata. So there, of course, we had higher class people, but nevertheless, it was a nasty fratricidal war, a civil war. Like in India, it was neighbors killing neighbors. In India during partition, it was neighbors killing neighbors. People who were very friendly with each other. Prabhupada used to say he had his Muslim neighbor, and he would call him uncle, go to their house. The only thing he wouldn't do is eat what they ate, because they were meat eaters and he wasn't. But he would treat them as uncles very affectionately. And then when Prabhupada was a little boy and he saw the Hindu-Muslim riots, he was bewildered. Why are they doing this? These are just our neighbors. They were trying to kill each other. So the heavy bodily concept of life had developed. So similarly, in this battle of Kurukshetra, it became brother against brother. But now the war's over. The war was won. And the good side won. But then the question is, then this Asvatthama did a heinous activity. So what to do? Well, one side said, let's kill Asvatthama. Bhima said, he said, we have to kill a horrible person. And Draupadi said, we can't kill him. He's a Brahmin and the son of your guru who trained you in the martial arts, Drona. So then Krishna speaks himself. A friend of a Brahmin is not to be killed. But if he is an aggressor, he must be killed. All these rulings are in the scriptures, and you should act accordingly. You have to fill your promise to your wife, and you must also act to the satisfaction of Bhishma Dev and me. The promise to your wife is, don't kill Asvatthama. And you must also act to the satisfaction of Bhishma and me, which means kill Asvatthama. So what bewilderment? How to kill and not kill? Then Arjuna could understand what Krishna was saying. And he severed the hair and jewel from his head. So if you were a Kshatriya and your top knot and your jewel was taken off, you lost your luster, you were considered very disgraced. And Krishna says in the Gita, to be, for one who has been honored, dishonor is worse than death. Worse. So this way he's doing something worse than death. So he's honoring what Krishna and Bhima had said, killing him, but doing something worse than killing him, and honoring what Draupadi said by not killing him. So this was a balance between justice and mercy. Now, as devotees, sometimes this can be very difficult to balance between justice and mercy. I'll give you one reason why. Each of us are wired in a different way. And some of us, I see, I'm co-director of ISKCON Resolve, the dispute resolution arm for ISKCON. The other service I do, of course, is the Bhaktivedanta Institute. But in the ISKCON Resolve side of my world, I find that some of the parties in a dispute are really into justice. Some are into mercy. There is this kind of dichotomy between two different groups is very common in life. And some people, like Bhima, are wired more for justice. Some are wired more for mercy. Sometimes we have the impression that women are inspired more for mercy and men more for justice. But I find it can be the other way too. It certainly can be the other way. So, my question to you is, which of you are wired for mercy and which of you are wired for justice? And anybody can unmute at this time and tell me how you see yourself. This is a hard question.
Please, you have any questions? You can just indicate by raising your hand, please.
Say that again.
I'm asking. You want people to ask questions? I'm saying if they have any question, they can.
Yeah. Some of you are strongly wired for mercy, and some of you are strongly wired for justice. I see it in everybody. No, we have to be fair. When I mediate, someone will go, this has to be fair. It's not fair. And then I know one judge, when people go in front of the judge and they say, Your Honor, this isn't fair. Then he uses the other meaning of fair, like a country fair or a state fair, a place where you have Ferris wheels and a fair, you have clowns, and I don't know if you have it in Africa, but we do in America. We have these fairs where people gather together for entertainment. And he says, if you want fair, go to a place with the Ferris wheel and the rides and everything. But here you've come for justice, because justice is not always fair. But here they're talking about justice. We want justice. The people want mercy. If you were back in the battle of Kurukshetra and you're there, and Krishna turned to you and said, what do we do with Asvatthama? What would you say? Do we kill him or do we let him go? Any thoughts on this?
I don't think I will still let him go. Because
you'd let him go. You let him go. You're the nice guy here.
No, I will not say so, because he killed 5 children. So
yeah, it's a difficult one. What do you think? Salika, what do you think, Prabhu? What do you think? You have such a nice smile. I can't imagine saying kill him, but you might. What do you say?
I would like to say kill him.
Kill him. Yeah. We have to know ourselves. I mean, it's part of self-realization.
Well,
what are the things? Sahadev, what do you think?
Yes. I'll say kill him.
Kill him. Yeah, you killed children during the sleep. You can see. Gayatri, what do you think? You're a lady here. Do you have the mood of Draupadi, or are you more the Kshatriya? Kill him.
But Gayatri, please, they probably want to hear your opinion.
Yeah. Oh, okay. We lost her. Okay, who else?
Yes, for me, before now, maybe I would have said killing. But now I think I can't say like that.
You've gone to a very good. What made you change?
Yeah, because personal realization. I was in that vindictive mood in the past, in my early days in devotional service, and I have a very bitter experience having to. Actually, personal realization was based on the fact that there was this was not even a killing. It was just a misunderstanding. And I personally ran a course because I was very bitter. And I got a very serious chastisement in my spiritual life. So I realized as time goes on, I kept on struggling for more than 2, 3, 4 years. More than that. Just keep struggling with my spiritual life. And I kept on asking questions. I constantly prayed. And I was finding out, have I done? I follow all regulative principles. I chant my rounds. What is happening? And of course, unlike before, I wasn't able to do my sadhana the way I used to do. I was struggling now. So I was trying to find out what is wrong with me. And after several years, by the grace of the Lord and my spiritual master, I was able to a kind of a dream. And then my Guru Maharaj came to me in my dream. And then he spoke to me. Then I realized what mistake I made. And I think from there on, I realized that it is not always the best thing to want revenge. And then by that, I was able to forgive the person involved. When I saw that realization, I was able to forgive him. And then miraculously, after that time, I started seeing a lot of difference in my taste for chanting. In my devotional activity, I started seeing some changes. So I appreciate when I have to talk with devotees that it's not always the best to take revenge, because we don't know what is in the background.
Thank you for sharing such a wonderful story of self-realization and maturity and rising above the modes of nature. It's a very good story. I find that personally very inspirational. Sometimes we have a lot of anger in us, and we have to get past that devotionally. We see that in this case, Bhima had so much anger for what happened. Arjuna did. And they had to rise above it. Can you give me screen sharing permission? If the host could turn on my screen sharing.
You can do that, no problem.
Okay, I'll share something with you. This is called Gita Values, something we wrote up a few years ago. And this is done by ISKCON Resolve with a lot of help from Shanika Rishi from Oxford Project. And we tried to extract from the Gita what are the values, 6 values that help form the basis of Krishna's advice to Arjuna. We try to drill down and then put it into 6 things. So these are the 6 qualities that we've extracted from the Gita that are the values that we see are the values devotees should live by. One of them is equal vision, that we see everyone equal. It doesn't make a difference what race, gender, caste, creed. Doesn't make a difference, your spirit, soul. And that was Prabhupada's vision. Second one is choice. We all have a certain freedom. It's just like Prabhu was just speaking. He had a choice, and he decided his spiritual life wasn't strong enough. He had to pray, go deeper. And the fine Satyananda Swami was just giving a series of lectures. He described the same spiritual crisis he had. He was chanting, but somehow it wasn't working. And he went and started praying, and he realized he had left praying out of his chanting. And when he added praying to his chanting, then he was able to get deeper. Sometimes we find an obstacle, and that obstacle can be overcome. It's an obstacle means opportunity. Any obstacle in devotional service is simply nothing but an opportunity. So we have free choice. It's just like you go to the airport. You have free choice. You can buy a ticket on any flight you want. But once you decide I'm buying a ticket to London, then you have very little choice left. You can lean your seat forward or lean your seat backwards. You can get a 7-Up or a water. But after that, you have very little choice left. So the biggest choice we make in our life is who to associate with, which flight to get on. If we make that right choice, then everything falls into place. If we make the wrong choice, we see life doesn't work well. That was Prabhupada's personal advice to me. Make a good choice on who I hang out with, and everything else will come into play. Ahimsa. This is an interesting one. Non-violence. We act without harm. So this is weird. One of the Gita takes place on a battlefield. And so yet we're talking without harm. So it doesn't necessarily mean not it means trying to avoiding violence if possible, avoiding cruel words, avoiding withholding knowledge from others. That's the most violent thing. Being neglectful of ourselves is a kind of violence. So Krishna is telling us to consider the welfare of everyone. That's real nonviolence. And sometimes we have to be violent for the sake of nonviolence. For example, somebody comes into the temple and they're going to, this has happened more than one time. People show up at the temple with guns, want to shoot the devotees. If somebody can use violence to stop that person, they have to. And so in that case, they're minimizing the harm. But we're hesitant to use violence. It's not the first thing we do, it's the last thing we do. And that example is in the Mahabharata. Even Krishna himself, who's God, went and tried to mediate between the parties. And one side refused to cooperate. They didn't want to mediate anything. Dhritarashtra's children were determined to fight no matter what. Another one is teaching by example. So if we're leading by example, I mean, that's what good government means. The leader sits by example. We had one American politician in Texas this week. The power went out for 3 million people. I was talking to my friend Ritavaja Swami in Dallas. For 3 days, he had no electricity or water because the power had gone out. And one of the leading politicians in the state, a U.S. senator, decided in the middle of this to take his children and go to Mexico where there was power and sun and warmth, because it was very cold in Texas. Texas is generally a warm country, but it was below freezing for days on end and no power and no water. And I mean, you know, very, very difficult. And so he went off to Texas and he got caught. A reporter caught him at the airport fleeing. And he had criticized many other politicians for during hurricanes and other events taking vacations. He says, I don't take vacation. When there's a crisis, I work. Look at you. You've gone away. You've gone away. And then he got caught going away himself. Very embarrassing. So he is not teaching by example. So an Acharya teaches by example. My uncle used to tell my cousin, whatever you do, never smoke. It's the worst thing you can do. But he always smoked himself. So therefore my cousin smoked. And he just had a heart attack due to smoking because there was no example. Humility. Now, this is a tough one, certainly for me. It's the key for spiritual life. It's the nicest quality we can possess. But how to be humble. Humble means we're acting not out of false ego, but out of the best welfare for others, which takes us to the last Gita quality. This is so important. Priti, affection, means well, whatever we're doing out of affection for others. We're trying to think, what is the best thing we can do for others? So these are the Gita values. And understanding the values from the Gita helps us make these decisions that we have to make in life. The story of Asvatthama is given so that we can fully understand that we have hard choices to make. And these choices, we have to pray and meditate and be very creative and clever. How can we act not on our lower instincts of revenge, hatred, and racism, and sexism, and casteism? How can we act on the highest platform? And if we meditate on the Gita values, we'll be able to do so. So, let me see. You can turn off the screen sharing now. Let me see. I'm trying to turn that off, but it's not cooperating here.
You have to stop screen sharing.
Yeah. Okay. I see. Here it is. Stop share. I got it. Okay. Now we got it. So, that's some of the lessons here. So it's 45 minutes into the class. At this point, I always stop and say, what are your questions on any topic you like? What mysteries of life don't you know about? And we can all together try to answer them. Anything that you have, any questions, and you can type it. Yes.
Adi, please unmute yourself.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, thank you so much for the class.
Yeah. Very good. Is there any question I can humbly try to answer for you?
Yes, I have lots of questions for you, Prabhu.
Oh, okay. Let's go for the first one.
Okay. The first one is, well, I was really happy to hear you say something about, I don't want to mention the name, but everybody knows, the disgraceful senator who abandoned his constituents.
Yeah.
And tried to go to Cancun and enjoy himself. You know. Well, my question is this. Yesterday, the previous verse we read yesterday was that Drona knew how to release the weapon, the Brahmastra, but he didn't know how to retract it. And Srila Prabhupada was emphasizing how dangerous it is if one does not have complete knowledge. So that kind of reminded me, reminded me about how oftentimes U.S. tries to prevent other nations from having access to weaponry, especially like Iran, because they feel that if these people have access to atomic weapon, for instance, they can destroy lots of innocent people. So is it like really appropriate that U.S. has this weaponry, but they try to prevent others from possessing these weapons? That's my first question.
Okay, well, you've asked an interesting question. You've obviously been giving thought to it. Prabhupada gives the example that the cavemen used to drop rocks on each other's heads. You know, they'd stand on a cliff and drop a rock, and we drop bombs. He said it's the same phenomena. So that's the same thing. Now, America is the largest supplier of weapons in the world. So we supply weapons to countries who we want to be our friends, and countries who we think are our enemies, we keep them from getting weapons. This is natural during the war. During the American Civil War, one reason the South lost, which was a good thing, but one reason they lost is because they couldn't, the North had more boats, so they blocked the ports. And so the South had a lot of trouble importing weapons from Europe, and ammunition and gunpowder. And the North had more industry, so they can manufacture also. So it's natural during a war that one country will try to keep weapons away from the other country. Now, if you're asking, does America behave well in the world? Well, certainly in the last 4 years, we had a horrible person in the White House. He's just a low-class, horrible person who was basically, my wife's a psychotherapist. She analyzed, as many others, that we have somebody who has borderline personality disorder combined with narcissism. You know, in other words, a psychologically damaged person. So he was very much into making the whole world into friends and enemies. Friends and enemies is the mode of passion. When we are in a mode of passion, we see this is a friend, this is an enemy. In a mode of goodness, you see everyone is spirit, soul, but some are covered. Even during the battle of Kurukshetra, we see that Arjuna fought very hard, but he didn't see the people on the other side as his enemies. When the war was over, Yudhisthira didn't declare victory and say, "Oh, I'm so happy now, I killed them all." He felt so sad that he killed them all. He had to do his duty, but he felt sad about it. That shows somebody in the higher modes of nature. So America often acts in the lower modes of nature, and under our last president, we had America, there's something called America exceptionalism, that America is better than anyone else. It's a horrible, horrible concept. When Africa was colonized by the British, the Dutch, the French, the Portuguese, the idea was that the Europeans were better than Africans, and therefore we should control it. When Lord Mountbatten, he was the Governor General of India, and when Lord Mountbatten, after he was assassinated long after Indian partition, and he was assassinated in Ireland by the Irish Republican Army. After he was assassinated, his diary was published. And in his diary, he said, "We knew when we divided India into Pakistan East, Pakistan West, and India, we knew that would be a crazy arrangement to have one country of Muslims split into two pieces, different ethnicities even. We knew it would never work, and therefore they would have to invite the British back to manage." So millions and millions and millions were killed. And he was thinking, because this way we can come and control India again. So these things happen like that, where national pride lets one act in the most cruel, horrible ways. You know, the extreme case is Hitler, where if you were not of German racial origin, he killed Jews and Romanians and blacks and gypsies and anybody he didn't like. If you were crippled or if you were weaker, then you should be killed also. It was horrific, this bodily concept. So America often gets caught up in the bodily concept of life. Now, after World War II, I was discussing before, I didn't finish that story. After World War I, we made Hitler happen. But after World War II, General George Marshall, who took over how to deal with the conquered countries in Europe, such as Germany and Italy, he did a different plan. He called it the Marshall Plan. So George Marshall said, now that we've conquered Germany and Italy and other countries in that alliance, we're going to help them out. We're going to give them financial aid and food and reconstruction support. And since that time, Germany has been one of America's strongest allies, because he did the opposite. After World War I, they did reparations. Germany, you did this, we're going to get revenge now. We're going to get you. And after World War II, he said, no, we're going to treat you like ladies and gentlemen and try to help you rebuild your society. And formed the longest lasting alliance that we've seen in modern times. So this is a good lesson. If America or Nigeria or India or any country, if they have a war with their neighbor, and as soon as they win, they be very generous and beneficial with their neighbors, like Arjuna was with Ashvatthama. They show some kind of mercy. You take the people who are the criminals who committed war crimes, they may have to be punished, but the citizens themselves are given, I'm here to protect you, not to take from you. Then any country that does that ultimately will be appreciated, like America was after World War II. Now America's become, this idea that America is better than anyone else began with the Monroe Doctrine in early 1800s by President Monroe, saying that we are better, so we have a right to take the land from the American Indians or from other countries. And then it became manifest destiny, that it's our destiny to rule, and then it became American exceptionalism. It's all the same a bodily concept that I'm better than you, packaged by different names. And we see it all over the world. So if you're asking, has America engaged in a heavily bodily concept, instead of being the Acharya, America is the, America becomes a leader in bodily concept. There's a lot of truth to that. Prabhupada liked America because when he went to India, it was too poor to get anything done. He went to Russia, it was too restrictive to do anything. So he said, America, you have some wealth and some freedom. This is a great opportunity because the economic problems are less and the freedom to do things are high. If Prabhupada had come to America even 1 year sooner, he would not have succeeded. They would never allowed in this Christian country some so-called Hindu to come and preach. Prabhupada came just at the right time when American youth was looking for something else. I was part of that generation, I know. Prabhupada had come later, he would have missed the opportunity. Krishna sent him almost to the day, to the perfect moment. Because the Vietnam War and civil rights in 1967, when Prabhupada came, they had just passed the Civil Rights Act. So before that, basically, in the South, blacks were still, basically, it was still a form of slavery was going on, even though it was 100 years after the Civil War. And we finally passed a law in 1864 outlawing many of these horrible practices. But the Vietnam War was building up. So my generation said, something's wrong here. We're treating people so badly. We're fighting wars that make no sense. And so we had basically a rebellion. And Prabhupada came in the midst of this and said, what are you rebelling against? You have to rebel against the bodily concept of life. If you don't do that, all of this talk is nonsense. And it resonated with all of us. When I heard it, I said, yes, this is what I'm looking for. It was such a confusing time. And then Prabhupada gave us something so wonderful. By the way, I am going to post, I saw a note that you couldn't read the Gita values. Such a nice thing, the Gita values. What I'm going to do is I'm going to post it in the chat section here. Let's see. Just take me a moment to do that. Here it goes. Let's see. Okay. And now I can post it in here. Let's see. Here it is. And we'll find the Gita values and I'll post it for all of you. Here it is. Okay, now you have the Gita values posted. You can all download it. It's such a super valuable document. So, are there any more questions? We've gone on for an hour, and I don't want to bore you to death, so we have to limit it. So, Dave, you have more. You always ask questions. Yes, so I'm always glad you're here.
Yes. My other question is, some conceptions I have, and I try to imbibe and try to practice. One is, I think and feel that a disciple's duty is to help protect the spiritual master's material needs. In other words, if the spiritual master needs something to keep his body together for me to be enlightened spiritually, it is my responsibility. I do not have to wait for the spiritual master to tell me, I need this, I need that before I provide them. And the spiritual master is mercifully giving me spiritual enlightenment. So in that case, if me being a disciple refuses, not fail, but refuses to take care of the spiritual master's needs, I consider myself to be like good for nothing. And I just want to find out from you if such an attitude is right.
Yeah, go on.
Okay.
Go on.
2 is the spiritual master, like in the life of Bhakti Center Prabhupada, he was being attacked, and of course, being Paramhamsa, he didn't want to protect himself, but the disciples found it necessary to protect him, so they switched deity with him just to protect him. So yes. I feel that as a disciple, as a devotee, if my spiritual master has some sort of material needs, and I am in the situation or in the position of being able to provide them, and I do not provide them to my spiritual master, then I'm a good for nothing disciple, if such a conception is appropriate.
Well, what's an interesting, solid, Dave, you think a lot. I like that. You're a good thinker. There's no hard and fast rule. There is the rule of the flight attendant. All of you have probably been on an airplane at some point. And when you get on an airplane, any place in the world, the flight attendant gives you wonderful spiritual advice. Do you know what that advice is? Every flight attendant in the world, on every flight, gives this advice. Very good advice when you get on the airplane. Anybody know what it is? Very good spiritual advice. We have to live by this every day. And I don't care which airline. They all give the same advice. Can someone tell me what it is?
Yeah, they ask if there is an accident, oxygen, if you fell from the sky, save yourself first before helping someone else near you.
Yes, Kusha, you got it. Very good. First, you put on your own mask, and then you help the person next to you. So the first thing we have to do is make sure our own spiritual life is secure. Then we can help others. So one of the people we help is our spiritual masters. If our spiritual master has some particular need, he's ill and needs some medicine. Even that famous story of the gopis, the sage was trying to get some dust from the feet of a devotee to cure Krishna's headache. No one wanted to give Krishna, put dust, because, then I'll go to hell. I don't want to give the merchant, the warrior. No one wanted to give dust to cure Krishna's headache. But the gopis take it all. I don't care if I go to hell as long as it serves Krishna. So that's a very advanced stage. So if I'm going to help my spiritual master out and I become envious, I'm giving him money and who does he think he is? Better I just work on my own spiritual life. But if I have some resources and I can help my spiritual master out, that's seva, that's service. So it depends on the circumstances. But here's the point, Sahadev. You can tell yourself, I'm not a very good devotee because I'm not helping my guru. That's okay. But you cannot say to someone else, oh, you're not a good devotee because you're not helping your guru. That's the individual freedom. So for you to say to yourself, I'm not very good, I should do more, that's healthy. But to say the other guy's not very good, that's not so healthy. You can encourage them, oh, our spiritual master needs something, can you help? That's okay. But to criticize them for not helping, that's not so good. Bhakti Siddhanta says, when you point a finger at someone, that means you have 3 fingers pointed at you. So we can point a finger at ourselves, but not so healthy to point at others. Did I answer your question, Sahadev? Okay.
Yes. Yes. The reason why I asked, I do not want it to be open, but it is more than what I asked, but the answer you gave, I believe, is very appropriate based on the question I asked. But what I had in mind is pertaining to ISKCON property, where I am not in that particular place where the property is located. So there isn't much I can do except those who are there. But I understand your answer. Thank you so much.
Okay, yeah, and sometimes these things are very circumstantial, and we just have to work it out.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, what other questions do we have today from wonderful devotees?
Yes, Maharaj Hare Krishna, I have one question, please.
Yes, Prabhuji.
My question is on Guru Aparad and Vaishnava Aparad.
Okay, what's your question?
My question is, we speak so much about don't commit offense, don't commit Vaishnava Aparad.
Yeah.
But sometimes we see that the management, in the way of making devotees to do some service or to do something, they will say, Guru said you should do this, Guru said you should do this, when Guru never really said anything. I was reading yesterday about Prabhupada, with so many things he said, I do not say that, I do not say that. So,
yes,
many devotees of Prabhupada were using his name to say what he never said to other devotees to do some things. So is that Guru Aparad and Vaishnava Aparad, which one is the most offensive?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. A very, very appropriate question. You've asked a good question. We have to take the middle road. Krishna says, don't eat too much, don't eat too little. Don't sleep too much, don't sleep too little. So we have to take the middle road. We want to follow our guru, but not use the guru's name in vain. One of the 10 commandments in the Bible is not to use God's name in vain. So similarly, we should not use the guru's name in vain. And so we try to make people feel guilty. That does not make for higher service. My own dealings with Prabhupada is he didn't make us feel guilty. He just didn't do it. Sometimes people wouldn't do well, and he would even chastise them, but he didn't make them feel bad about themselves. In fact, he tried to make people feel good about themselves. So to use the Guru's name in vain is not appropriate. And I'm very hesitant to say, oh, your Guru wants this, your Guru wants that. I try to convince people this is in their interest to do it. So if somebody's not cooperating, I say, well, is this really the best thing to do for what we're trying to accomplish? And we look at it, what Shastra says, what Guru says, what Paramatma in our heart says. We look at them all. But to go and use the Guru's name too much that way, it's a little dangerous in my opinion. I mean, every manager sometimes will do whatever it takes to get people to do their seva, but ultimately I don't think that's the wisest approach. And if somebody's using that approach, we should be compassionate with them and merciful. They're just trying to serve Krishna and get something done. In order to get something done, they're making that challenge. To get something done, they're saying, the guru said it. I mean, their motive is very good, but the method is probably not the most appropriate. So we appreciate that they're trying to do something, but we may not appreciate how they're doing it. I hope that answers your question, Kusha. It's an important question you asked.
Yes, Prabhu. Thank you very much.
Very important question. Is there any final question?
Yes, Prabhu, can I ask a question?
Yes, Alika, I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, in relation to question that Kusa Prabhu just asked, someone uses the guru's name to give a particular instructions or statement that guru said this. And sometimes you may not know the guru didn't say that.
Yeah.
But sometimes you know. So how should one relate to that person who has used guru's name when one discovers that he has actually used the guru's name and it has affected the person who he told? I'll give a practical example. I'm told by Guru said I should go to the door. Guru never said that. But in my way of going to the door, I got so much of discomfort. And maybe then or later I realized while he was telling me, I knew that Guru didn't say that. Or maybe after I've gone, I came to realize Guru didn't say I should go to the door. So how should one relate to that person who uses the name of the Guru to go make you go through inconveniences?
Yeah, it's a similar question, and it's a difficult matter. Sometimes in the name of management, I'm always very sympathetic to managers, because managers in a voluntary organization have an impossible job. If I'm in a company and you work for me and I say, go to the door, and you don't go, I can fire you. But in a voluntary organization, you can't fire people. So managers have to get things done, and sometimes they use techniques that are not the best technique. So, but we have to be very mature. We have to be very mature and say, oh, he's doing the best he can. It's not very good. We understand it, and we try to cooperate the best we can. At the same time, we understand, oh, that's not very good. I'm not saying you should see bad management as good, but you still cooperate with it. I've had in my service some of the worst managers ever, but I cooperated with them. They were terrible. I mean, I can't believe how bad they were. But I cooperated with them because Prabhupada tells the story from the Aesop fables. If you have one stick, anybody can break it. But if you have a bundle of sticks, nobody can break it. So if we cooperate together, no one can stop our movement. And if we fight among each other, anyone can stop it. But I'm not saying you should think it's the right thing. We still might humbly cooperate, but it's not the right thing. And for some manager to keep using a guru's name, that's not very smart. He's a very immature manager. He should go to management school. We do. ISKCON has it now. We have BBC Training College. We have there's many training institutions for managers. We didn't have it when Prabhupada left the planet. All of us were under 30 years old. Practically, there was 2 devotees over 30, I think. All of us under 30, and there was no management school. We didn't know what we were doing. People wonder why the movement was so chaotic when Prabhupada left. What I wonder is how is it we're still here? Just proof of the potency. But sometimes managers need to go to management school. And sometimes we just have to be patient. Every time I've seen a manager who's really been outrageous, Krishna has every single time eventually fixes the situation. So it's like one of the Gita values is patience. But we also have to be determined. If we're just patient, that's the mode of ignorance. If we're just determined, that's the mode of passion. But when we're both patient and determined, combined in just the right balance, that's the mode of goodness. So we have to be patient and determined. If I'm a leader and another leader's misbehaving, I may have to have a private talk. I don't want to embarrass the leader, but I have to have a private talk. Or if that doesn't work, I may have to see the GBC man and say, oh, so-and-so leader, he's really inappropriate. He needs some training. Remember, we want to kill the sin, not the sinner. That's difficult to do.
Just one more, if I'm allowed.
Yes, Salika, you ask good questions, so go on, please.
Please. Okay. In post-conflict discussions, that is what word they use, trauma healing. When there has been disagreement, quarrels, fights among devotees, for whatever reasons, and you mentioned as part of your answers that we should try as much as possible to cooperate. How do you cooperate in a situation whereby someone is being hurt in the course of dealing with that devotee or individuals in the course of maybe probably the person is was living in the temple, is completely dependent on the temple, is sent out of the temple for no just cause, and there wasn't any or some whatever reason, it could be any case, but now that devotee needs to work cooperatively with the management, with the other God brothers. I think this is what they call trauma healing. So, but in devotional service, how do we apply this?
Salika, that's I see this a lot. So you've asked a question that's in the 1970s, before I was initiated, I was associated with the New York Temple. I was going to graduate school, and I'd go to the temple 2-3 times a week at least. And even though it was an hour drive, I had to go. And then there was one sannyasi who was head of the temple. Prabhupada personally told me, ask him if you have any questions. And then, even though he was a sannyasi, he got married. And Prabhupada said, that's okay, and even did the wedding ceremony. Then this sannyasi's wife was the most horrible person I've seen. She thought she was better than everyone else, and she tortured especially the ladies in the ashram, horribly so. And eventually she started offering chicken to Radha Govinda. I'm not exaggerating. I was watching this madness. So 3 devotees, senior devotees, stood in the temple and said to the temple president and his wife, we're not letting you in. News got to Prabhupada. Prabhupada then sent people to investigate. And Prabhupada praised those people who blocked the doorway because they were senior people. He said you had a duty to do that. Those other senior people who stood by, even though there was so many discrepancies, and ignored it, Prabhupada chastised them. To the ordinary devotee who, in spite of discrepancies, and they knew there were discrepancies, but they did their service anyway, Prabhupada praised them. So it depends on who you are. So if you're a leader and some other leader is misbehaving, you may have to say something. Or say something to their boss. Everyone has a boss. And even the GBC men, they all have a boss, the GBC body. So you may have to say something if somebody is very discrepant. But if you're not a leader, instead of complaining, just follow, cooperate, knowing Krishna will rectify it sooner or later. So it depends on what our position is. But it's like this mercy and justice. If you're born with more justice than mercy, and some people are born that way. And some people are born with more mercy than justice. It takes both kinds to make the world work well. So if you're one born with a good sense of justice and you're not getting it, then you may have to say something. But you don't go criticize publicly. You rather talk to other authorities. So-and-so, he's misbehaving. He's our temple president, but he's misbehaving. And sometimes the temple president on his own will figure it out. Sometimes he'll get good instruction. But Salika, you're asking important questions. These are important. They really are. I see George has a question. I see a hand raised.
Krishna Prabhu, thank you very much for a wonderful lectures. Please, I would like to know when Draupadi's children were killed, she began to lament to the point that Arjun have to kill Ashwatthama to pacify her. My question here is, does that mean that anything that happens to us does not involve around karma? Because I think Draupadi should be in the knowledge to see that whatever happened is destined to happen. But here lies the case, she was lamenting. So that's my question. Does that mean that in this situation, there is nothing like karma involved here? And in our individual's life also, does that mean sometimes certain things might happen to us? We should not consider it as our karma. That's my question, Prabhu.
So what you're saying, when something happens, should we consider it our karma? When something bad happens to us, we should never blame anybody else. That's a sign, just like Queen Kunti, so many difficulties came, but she didn't blame others. She said, Krishna, thank you. It makes me pray more and think of you more. So whatever difficulty happens to us, we may get angry, we may get this or that, but when we're in higher consciousness, we see it. Everything is good. One devotee, a huge tragedy. His wife had died in a very tragic circumstance. Senior devotee. So I called him up. I said, Prabhu, I'm so bad. Your wife has died, such a tragedy. Oh my God, this is terrible. And the first words out of his mouth shocked me. I still remember them as if it was yesterday, and this was 5 years ago. And he said, Krishna is kind. Even though it was a horrible, tragic circumstance, he understood right away that Krishna is kind. That's Krishna consciousness. So we try to understand the best we can that whatever difficulty happens to us, Krishna is very kind. And if we're having some so-called karmic reactions, a tiny piece of what we deserve, just to teach us a little bit. So that's my understanding of this. I hope that helps you with your question. Are there any other questions? It's almost time now. So one last question, or we can stop here. Yes, Sahadev.
Yes, I have one more question, Prabhu. And that has, in fact, I had saved some questions for you. And probably I will save them for another time you bless us with your presence on our platform.
It's a blessing for me to be here. You're all so nice. I mean, I wish I could visit in person.
My last question for today is, we understand to err is human.
Yes.
And so being human beings, we're going to err at some point. When Arjun and the brothers went out and then came home with the Draupadi, Arjun told his mom, his mother, Mother Kunti, hey, Mom, look at what I brought home. And with that, she even turned in to see what Arjuna had brought home. She said, okay, share amongst yourselves. And when she
It's very
when
funny.
she turned, she realized that, oh, this is not just an item. It's a human being, a pretty lady. So of course we know the story behind why Draupadi had to be married to 5 people. But in a physical, in an real world, are we supposed to correct ourselves when we realize that we made a mistake?
Well, you've asked an interesting question. In this case, these were Kshatriyas, and Kshatriyas went by a code that once they said something, it had to be. So it was a little different circumstance. They were acting as Kshatriyas then. Ourselves, no one's pure Brahmin, no one's pure Sat, no one's pure Kshatriya, no one's pure anything in Kali Yuga. We're all mixed. So that story is a little exaggerated because there were Kshatriyas and acted on this, my word is my word. We have this, I was just talking about Asvatthama here, but on the battlefield, we have the story of Asvatthama dying, the son of Drona. So I think it was Arjuna who was saying, Asvatthama is dead to demoralize the other side. But the Asvatthama that died was the elephant named Asvatthama, not the person. So he cheated a little bit to win on the other side. You may say, that's not right. There's a saying in America, all's fair in love and war. So sometimes these things happen. So generally, we do correct our errors. In this case, though, there was a pastime going on. It was supposed to happen. Kunti understood it. It was supposed to happen. Yes, she could have corrected the error, just like Parikshit. When he was cursed by the Brahmin boy, he could have countered the curse in a minute. Just like in this story here, the Asvatthama sent the Brahmastra, and Arjuna was powerful enough to counteract it. So he did. Parikshit was powerful enough to counteract the curse of the Brahmin boy. Brahmin Bandhu, friend of the Brahmins. He wasn't even a qualified Brahmin. He could have done it. But in this case, in one case, Arjuna counteracted it. In the other case, Parikshit did not counteract it. So they both, very similar circumstances. Each one, a weapon was thrown at them. One said, that's God's mercy, I'll die. And the other said, no, I'm going to counteract it. So it's not that the same circumstance. So it's called time, place, and circumstance. So we have to act according to time, place, and circumstances. So just because Kunti did one thing, it doesn't mean we always do that. Sometimes we have to, Prabhupada would say we have to have intelligence to know when we should go along with something and when we should oppose something. And if we don't have that intelligence, then we pray and ask our God brothers and spiritual mentors, what do I do if we don't know? Because it's never one size fits all. Sometimes you buy clothing, like gloves, they say one size fits all. Big hands, small hands, it can fit everybody. But Krishna consciousness is not one size fits all. It has to be adjusted to each of our individuals by the circumstances. That was a very nice question you asked. Okay, well, it's 6:30. I think it's time to stop. But thank you very much. I love visiting Africa, especially with no jet lag. As I by Zoom, without jet lag is really good. So that's even better. So one day, if by Krishna's grace, I'll get to visit Africa. But I hope to join you again another time. Thank you very much. All of you have a good day. And in this odd times of political turmoil and COVID pandemic and everything, I hope you all stay safe and well. I've had my 2 shots already, so hopefully I'm protected. We'll see. But I hope you get your shots and can stay well.